Hello and welcome. We're going to do our first baking lesson today, and it is basic white bread. Now, basic white bread is sort of the basic, simple thing you can start with, and I like to start with something simple just so we don't get too complicated. I have a lot of friends that ask me, I want to do a starter and I want to feed it and then I want to make my own sourdough, and that's great if you have a lot of practice and are more advanced, but I would suggest not doing that until you have quite a bit of practice with bread and how it responds. That's just my opinion. We're going to start with something simple. This is basic white bread. It's a lean dough, and that means it doesn't have a lot of fat. So it's sort of like my business partner Nick. It has just 4 ingredients. That's why I call it simple. I'm going to put this over here. And we're going to start. First, we have our flour. Now, I use bread flour, and it gives it a better texture. Then we have our salt. We have our yeast. I use instant yeast. Instant yeast is better than active dry yeast because it works even with cool water. You can add it directly into the flour. It's much better. That's what I suggest. My opinion, but you should use that. I use water. We have our water here, just cool, regular tap water. And that's all. Now, I have everything ready to go and I've measured it out. But we measure everything in weight. Here's a scale. Is very vital for everyone to have, because everything's value is measured in weight. It's sort of like a gay bar in West Hollywood. And everything is done in ratios to flour. So our flour, we take the weight of the flour and then everything is a percentage of that. I know it sounds a little complicated, but it'll be really easy after you get used to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by mixing the water and the salt together. We put our water in the bowl, just put it directly in. That's how we start. And we add the salt in. Now you can maybe see my dog in the background. He's decided to get a drink of water right now. So you can never tell him when I'm filming. We're going to mix that around with a whisk. Just so it's nice and dissolved. All the salt is dissolved in the water, and yeah, we're good. And we put that aside, and then we take our yeast and we dump our yeast directly into our flour. And then we're going to take the same whisk and we're going to mix it around in here just to get even distribution of the yeast into the flour. So we dissolve the salt. No one wants a huge chunk of salt in their bread when they're eating it. We just want to have it to deepen the flavor. And the yeast, we make sure it's well distributed. We'll put our whisk aside with our other used items, and then we just add directly into the water. We just add the flour. Be careful when you do this, go slowly, or you're going to have a bunch of white powder in your face. It'll be like Miami Vice in the 80s. Then move it to the stand mixer, and we do it on speed 2 for 2 minutes, and then speed 4 for 4 minutes. Now, if you're doing this by hand, and I'll do it by hand, just mix it together, and you can mix it together in your bowl with a wooden spoon until it gets sort of shaggy, and then we're going to knead it. But I'm going to do the first mix in the stand mixer because it's easier and I'm lazy. There we go. It's slightly, sometimes it'll be slightly less wet. I'm going to put this aside. We'll put our mixer there. And then we start by kneading it. And this is something we need to do for about 8 minutes. And it will work itself out really nicely after you knead it for a while. Now I'm going to cut away because I'll look ridiculous if I knead this on camera for 8 minutes. So I'll be back in 8 minutes when I'm done kneading this dough. So then we're going to put it into an oiled container. Now, I love my little plastic container. This is great. Right here you can see. It has markings on it, so we know when the dough is actually doubled. And we take a little bit of oil, we rub it all on the inside of the plastic container so nothing sticks to this, because dough can sometimes be sticky. And we're going to coat the dough as well with oil, because we don't want the dough to dry out. And it has to be really moist all the time. So I'm going to put a little here on me. And don't worry, it's not la leak, it's not going to break. So there you go. That is our dough. And we're going to set it in here. And we're going to let it rise until it's doubled. It's going to be almost to the top of the pan, the container when we're ready. As you can see there, it's about 1.5, so it's going to go up to about 3. And we're just going to set it aside, and then I'll be back in about an hour, and we will pre-shape it before we do our final shaping. And so I'm going to clean this up and do a little time-lapse video for you, and you'll see that. So I'll be back in about an hour, but it'll seem like no time to you. Okay, so we have our 2 divided risen doughs here, and we are going to shape them into what's called a boule. A boule is French for ball, and it helps pre-shape it and adds tension to the top of the loaf, which we want. So this is how we do this. You fold it over from the bottom. Just add it so it's all nice and gathered, and then we turn it over, and then we gently pull it toward us. Now we want to add a little bit of flour to our hands when we do this. And gently cup it as we pull it toward us and slightly turn it. Just a smidgen of flour, just so it doesn't stick. And you're able to add a little bit of tension to the dough. There, that's nice. And we're going to sit that aside right there and do this one. Pull it up. I'm not sure if you can see that in the video, but pull it all inside nice. We turn it over. And then slightly flour our hands, pull it toward us. Once you've done the first one a couple times, you get a lot quicker. And then we're going to leave it here on our worktop, covered in slightly oiled plastic wrap for about 20 minutes. We take the plastic wrap there, and I like to put the oil on it. Just a little bit of oil, like that, and then cover it just so it doesn't stick to the loaf. And we also don't want it to dry out. We're going to use these plastic wraps later as well, so remember that. Just slightly oil it, place it on top here. And then we'll be back in 20 minutes, and it will be relaxed, and then we'll do our final shape before it goes right into the final rise before the oven. So I'll see you in 20 minutes. It's been 20 minutes, and this is slightly relaxed. We're going to take off the plastic wrap, put this aside, put the oil side up, just to be safe. We're going to move our bread pan here. Now we're going to take a little bit of flour and sprinkle it into the bread pan just so it is slightly there. And we're going to put it aside, take our boule, turn it over, and we're going to press it out and form a rectangle with it, okay? It's not lead leak, it's not going to break, don't worry about that. It's really very just pliable right now. And so this is going to be one loaf of bread. Get all the gas out of this. We're going to fold it over once, like this. Put our fingers in, make sure it gets really connected there. Then we're going to fold it over again and use our heel of our hand to press it together, just so it stays nice. And then what I like to do is just fold over slightly, pinch it together, and then cup it just ever so slightly and pull it toward you, just to give a little bit of tension in the loaf. And that is how I shape my loaves. And then we just plop that into our prepared pan here. Boom. A little bit of flour on your hands. And then we take our oiled cover and cover it. And let it rise for an hour to an hour and a half until it's double in size. Okay, so our bread is about doubled from what it was. We're going to carefully remove the plastic wrap, and you can see it is puffed up really nicely. It's ready to go in the oven. So we take our plastic wrap off, and then what I like to do is I take a bread lame, and the bread lame is a little razor blade attached to a holder. You can take just a razor blade by itself if you want. And we slice the bread down the center so the steam can escape when it bakes. I like to do a little bit of a design on it, just a little bit, so you cut it, and those will go in the oven. What I like to do, you can do a few things, but you can spray the top of your loaf with a little bit of water. It doesn't help that much, but it helps to keep the surface of the dough moist when you put it in the oven, and that keeps it from cooking really quickly, allowing the yeast to expand inside without breaking through the dough or the crust. You can also pour a cup or half a cup of water in a pan on the bottom of the oven. The pan should be really hot, should be in there from when you preheat the oven, and it will cause steam, and you shut the oven door and allow it to steam inside the oven. You can do that, and that will make for better bread. But I'm going to put these in the oven right now, and I'm going to check them in about 20 minutes. I'm going to check the internal temperature, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Having a good thermometer is very important. I use, from ThermoWorks, it's called the chef alarm. Now, you can turn it on here, and you can program it to alarm when it hits a certain temperature. And I like to bake my bread until it's 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And right now it shows the internal temperature of my kitchen at 71 degrees, and this is set to 195. It's really a great tool to use. I highly recommend getting a thermometer that you can use to check the internal temperature of items. That's how you really know things are cooked well. Okay, that sound means that our bread is ready. The timer, go grab it. It's not the timer, I'm sorry, that is the temperature gauge. It is telling us that the bread is ready. I'm going to take it out of the oven. So these are our loaves of bread. Hopefully you can see that there, a little hot. I'm going to take it out of the loaf pan, put that there. And this is these are our loaves of bread. Now, we're going to let them cool for about 2 hours until they're room temperature, or maybe an hour. And then we're going to cut it because it's still really hot inside and it's still going to cook for a little while we let it cool. Okay, we're back. It's been a little while. The bread has had a chance to cool, and if you can see the inside here, it has an irregular crumb structure, which is what we want. There's some little holes. That's really nice. It is spongy. Tear it apart, and it's a nice feeling loaf. That is good. As I try not to choke on it myself, let me know how you guys turned out or how your bread turned out. I really want to see. Share with me pictures. Let me know. I can't wait to hear from you.